Khafre or another king? A lion's head which would have been reworked to be transformed into Pharaoh's head? Whatever. The question is, what does the head of the Sphinx look like? With 3D face reconstruction software, here is the face of the Sphinx reconstructed correctly for the first time. No comment. Since they were black, it makes sense to make a sculpture in their image. Like a painter who paints his god in his image, the Egyptians made the Sphinx to theirs. It is hard to imagine white Egyptians making a sculpture of their god or their king with a Negro profile.
Yes, you heard the word Negro. It is unfair to show you a recipe without showing you the real chef of this monument. Look at all this sculpture. You'll notice one thing. They all have broken noses. If one observes the statue and frescoes, the resemblance is striking. The nose, the big lips. Indeed, many statues have a broken nose because they had, as they say, a Negro noses. Herodotus says that Colchon was a colony of the Egyptians because they had black skin and curly hair. Book 2, Euterpe. The Colchon were an African colony which migrated to settle near the Black Sea. Aristotle also spoke of the Egyptians, describing them as excessively black. Those who are excessively black are cowards. They are the Egyptians and the Ethiopians. The Greek use 4 words to say black, dark brown: keleinos, eremnos, aiton, and melas. Melas is the most complete physical black. It is the root of the word that forms the word melanin. Melas, melanin. Melanin is the pigment that colors the skin black to protect it from the sun. Aristotle will say precisely agan melanes to designate the Egyptian and the Ethiopians, which mean excessively black in Greek. Xerxes III, called Senusert in Egyptian, holds the record for the number of sculptures in his effigy, 12. Almost all of these sculptures have broken noses, but some escape the racial inquisition. The Senegalese Professor Diop asked the Caire Museum to take 3 samples measuring only 1 square millimeters from mummy of Ramses II, Seti I, and Thutmose III, exhibited at the Museum of Cairo. Once the sample would have been analyzed, they will have revealed the level of melanin. The higher the rate of melanin, the darker the skin.
That I put at the disposal of the participants of the conference so that we can observe them under a microscope. And we can absolutely see the degree of melanin under the skin of ancient Egyptians. There is enough left despite the partial destruction of the epidermis. In the region between the dermis and the epidermis, there are enough inclusions of the melanocyte bases, areas where the melanin would have resided, to reveal a level of melanin via these inclusions, absolutely absent in Leucoderma races. And last year, I wanted to apply this study to the royal mummy of Ramses II, Seti I, and Thutmose III. For 1 year, I have been writing to the curator of the Cairo Museum because I don't need more than a square millimeter. 1 square millimeter of skin, but not always in the same region. And I regret I did not obtain these samples. So you see, it is a very easy, accessible study that can be done. Here are the blades. These are the preparations. Just put them under the lens of the microscope to see the melanin level. So based on my own investigations, here they are, until further investigation.
The museum has still not responded for 35 years. The Egyptians were called Kemits, and Egypt was called Kemet, the land of the black. No, it is not the black color of the Nile silt, which is mentioned as some archaeologists claim, but the color of the skin of the people living there. When we speak of white country, we are not referring to the color of the snow in the Alps. Let's end the rumors of whether or not Howard Carter falsified the golden mask of Tutankhamun and reproduced false relic. Observe the mask of Tutankhamun and the face of this African girl. I can see Carter, the European, falsifying the African steel mask.
It is noon. The temperature is at full force. That is to say, that is about 45 to 46 degrees Celsius. There is absolutely no shade, since it's a quarry, and there is no building, and we can absolutely not take shelter. So much as to say that I will not stay here 3.5 hours.
It is getting a little warm here. We are behind the pyramid of Menkaure. I'm beginning to understand why Femi did not come.
In Egypt, during the summer months, the season during which the pyramid was built, temperature reached 45 degrees Celsius and higher. Under this overwhelming sun, no other human race could survive shirtless more than 4 days without experiencing severe skin burn. The only race capable of withstanding days and months without problem and without sunscreen is the Negro race with black skin. I paint and I never had a preference for this or that color. A painter likes all the colors, but we say that we must give back to Caesar what belonged to Caesar. Well, let's give back to the Egyptian what belongs to the Egyptian. The Egyptians of the pyramid for millennia were Negroes, neither olive-skinned nor mulatto, but charcoal black.
The Egyptians memorialized and imprinted their negritude in granite and quartz for eternity. What must we do? Destroy them to erase this era of humanity? Hide them? Speak out? Say nothing? Ask yourself these questions. For better or for worse, this story does not end there. It can cross anyone's mind to draw this shape. Nothing exceptional. On the planet, the probability that there are two civilizations which know how to make concrete in its chemical complexity, to smelt copper, and to attach them symbolically with the same shape is unimaginable. Yet thousands of kilometers separate them and the ocean. An investigative detective will tell you it was the same person, the same hand that made them. The mystery is solved until proven otherwise. Technically, these staples do not connect anything and do not strengthen the stones at all. The Egyptians knew it. It is a religious element. Egyptians spread it everywhere on Earth. In at least 2590 BC, Hedda, a court scientist, saluting these companions who were going towards Lebanon to look for oak wood, noted that the boats disappeared after a few minutes, diving below the horizon. However, the distance is not great. The human eye looks much further. He realized the extraordinary. The Earth is round. Expeditions were prepared. The Egyptians then left to explore the Earth. They knew that they cannot get lost. Since the Earth is round, they can always return to the starting point. The Egyptians knew navigation systems and infallibly mastered orientation. They had tools for universal measurements of distance and time, the stopwatch. The boats were fast and efficient. They were equipped to go discover the world. At the time of Herodotus, circumnavigating Africa by boat had become a promenade. When he stopped digging the canal which joined the waters of the Nile to the Arabian Gulf, Necho sent the Phoenicians on ships with orders to return through the columns of Hercules into the Septentrional Sea and back from this way in Egypt. Having thus traveled for 2 years, the third year they passed the columns of Hercules and returned to Egypt. Thousands of Egyptians traveled to America, now Guatemala, for the first time between 2000 and 3000 years BC. But not only the Egyptians, many other Africans accompanied them. Imagine, you are Mayans and you want to build a building to commemorate the dead or the gods. You observe and copy nature. You make graves in a circle, square, and all kinds of shapes. the last shape that comes to mind is that of a pyramid, and even less with tunnels passing underneath, as in Egypt. Recent analyses of Egyptian mummies have revealed traces of cocaine. The coca grows only in America. In addition, you must imagine them observing and measuring the equinoxes and solstices to align the pyramids. The Egyptian calendar started on July 14th, plus 5 days of celebration. That of Mayans also started on July 14th, plus 5 days of celebration. Then find the chemical formula for making concrete. By comparing the buildings of America and those of Egypt, the resemblance is striking, like 2 drops of water. Stronger evidence? What if we measured the pyramids of Central America? Before watching this film, the discovery of the standard of universal measurement, the meter, was a secret. It was complicated and abstract to find this universal standard. Now you know how the meter was invented by the Egyptians. And now the ultimate. The Egyptians who arrived here on the other side of the world built a pyramid with the meter and pi. The base of the Pyramid of the Sun measures 220 meters. Converted into units of inches, feet, or from yard, it becomes difficult for workers. In meters, the numbers are whole. The diagonal of the pyramid is pi in meters. The base of the pyramid, 220 meters, divided by the height. That is to say, 70 meters. The result is pi, 3.1428. Compared with Khufu, pi, 3.1429. The error is 0.0001%. The layout of the other pyramids is also in integers, in meters. The geometry of the Tikal pyramid is exactly that of Khufu. In 1983, archaeologist Garth Norman discovered that the Egyptian royal cubit was used by the builders in the edifices of Central America. The big year, the year of the 26,000 years of axial precession of the equinoxes, is present on a map of Orion, inscribed on the Izapa stela. The idea that a pre-Mayan people, or that the Mayans found and developed alone, isolated from the rest of the world, meter, pi, royal cubit, geopolymer concrete, and solar energy to melt the stone, is totally excluded. The probability is 0. On the other hand, we see here indisputably the same fingerprint, the same civilization, Egypt. 12,000 kilometers separate Egypt from Mexico. How did they manage to cross 7,800 kilometers of ocean? Between 2,000 and 3,000 years BC, the Egyptians crossed the Mediterranean, passed through Malta, refueled in Spain, and crossed the Atlantic Ocean in a straight line to get to Yucatan. They arrived by the thousands, and there is no shortage of Negroid faces. In 1946, giant heads called Olmecs were discovered. We see clearly African Negro heads. The African Olmecs were discovered in Central America, at the very place where the pyramids were found. It is the Egyptians' landing place. The Egyptians may have crossed the ocean via a land bridge, a continent in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. When Plato indicates Atlantis after the columns of Hercules, in other words, after the Strait of Gibraltar, it is very likely that he is right. This large expanse that would surface would be the ridge of the Atlantic. Atlantis would be the Azores. Following an unprecedented earthquake, this part of the ridge would have collapsed. It is this cataclysm which Plato calls the sinking of Atlantis, which cut the Egyptian Africans in two. Given the trips they made, they may have built buildings here before the upheaval. Research of this bridge should be done at this point of the ridge. This theory may seem far-fetched, but the chemistry, the pi, the meter, the golden number, the royal cubit, and the solar lenses did not cross the ocean on their own. They may have crossed the Atlantic with boats directly. Christopher Columbus made the second trip from the Canary Islands to Guadeloupe in 21 days. Documents speak of it. In less than 20 days, we saw land. It was an island without harbor or ports. Unable to land there, Columbus came to disembark on a neighboring island, which he called Dominica. They followed the trade winds. These are the regular and very powerful winds that cross the ocean from east to west. In fact, the sailors were worried about not being able to head into them on the return. They too had wooden boats and sailboats like those of Columbus. What is certain is that there is no question. The Egyptians crossed the Atlantic with their
Egyptian Revolution of 2011. As an Egyptian, I do not see that the Egyptian situation is improving at all. In fact, I see that it is declining. Now, the Egyptian situation has had a negative and direct impact in my life and my family life. Someone born and raised in Egypt, this is my experience. And because of how I feel about the Egyptian nation and the tremendous anger that I have towards this nation and the way it operates, I have decided finally to research the root of this issue. Yes, everything that happens has a root. So it is important to look at what is happening now and then look at where this is coming from. Well, I read many books. I read the Bible. This is an Arabic Bible. I read the Quran, Al-Karim. I read so many books. But I decided to start researching Egypt because the Bible talks a lot about Egypt. So I will read to you two brief statements from the scriptures. Starting with King James Bible version, the book of Genesis, chapter 9 and verse 18 says, "And the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth." Moving on to Genesis chapter 10 and verse 6, it says, "And the sons of Ham, Cush and Mizraim and Phut and Canaan." So the sons of Ham are Cush. Cush is the nation of Ethiopia. Mizraim is the nation of what you all call Egypt, but we until this day call ourselves Misri'in. In Hebrew, it is Misraim. Phut is the nation of Libya. Canaan, the nation of Canaan. Now, I decided to go a step further and look up the word Ham in the Zondervan Bible Dictionary. And the definition of Ham is warm, hot, and hence the south. Also an Egyptian word meaning black, black, black. The youngest son of Noah. So, with that said, I read to you three factual resources, and I have breaking news to all of you out there who want to say that the Egyptian people are white. In America, the white people, yes, the white people, descendants of Europeans, claim that Egyptians are white people. Egyptians are not white. They are black. Now, there are also Egyptians out there, many Egyptians that are Christians and Coptics especially, run around and say that Egyptians are white. To you also, I want to say that Egyptians are black. Egyptians are not white. Now, you could look at me and say, well, you're not black. Right, I'm not black, but I'm not white. I have been mixed. I am a descendant of mixed Egyptians, mixed with European colonizers. But in the sun, I do not burn. I do not get red. I turn darker and darker and darker. And also this video it tends to make, light-skinned people look even lighter because of the lighting. But regardless, if you are Egyptian, Christian, especially Coptic, and you are white, because there are very white Egyptians, guys. There are Egyptians who have green eyes and like really light brown hair, and I always wonder, well, why do they look different from me? If you are white and you are in Egypt and you're Christian and Coptic especially, I'm here to tell you that Egyptians are not white. You are white because you are a descendant of a white European colonizer. Or you are just simply European that has moved into Egypt and stayed there and had kids there and kept being white. So, with that said, I want to break the news to everyone that Egyptians are not white. We are black people. Go to Nubia, and you will see that the people there are very dark people. I don't like to say black because this is black. This is black. But they are a brown, very brown people. If you go to the city of Komombo in Egypt, forget Nubia because, that's a bit of a different nation, but in Komombo, a pure Egyptian city, people are dark-skinned, very melanated. In fact, my siblings are much darker than me. So again, with that said, please do not walk around and say Egyptians are white. Now, I gave you 3 pieces of evidence, but there's a ton of evidence out there. Like if you go to the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, you will see in the chamber of King Tutankhamun, which y'all call Tutankhamun, is a black. They're all black people. So stop lying, please.
This stela is what the Egyptians would have called a triumph stela, a victory stela, commemorating victory over foreign peoples.
Most of the hieroglyphic inscription celebrates Merneptah's triumph over Libya, his enemy to the west. But almost as an afterthought, he mentions his conquest of people to the east in just 2 lines.
The text reads, Ashkelon has been brought captive, Gezer has been taken captive, Yanoam in the North Jordan Valley has been seized, Israel has been shorn, its seed no longer exists.
History proves the Pharaoh's confident boast to be wrong. Rather than marking their annihilation, Merneptah's stela announces the entrance onto the world stage of a people named Israel.
This is priceless evidence for the presence of an ethnical group called Israel in the central highlands of southern Canaan.
The well-established Egyptian chronology gives the date as 1208 BC. Merneptah's stela is powerful evidence that a people called the Israelites are living in Canaan, what today includes Israel and Palestine, over 3,000 years ago.
We've been searching to find the evidence that Egypt recognized the existence of the ancient people of Israel living in the land of Canaan. Finally, right in front of us is the very thing we have been looking for. The Merneptah stela contains irrefutable evidence that 3,200 years ago, the people of Israel were living in Canaan as a distinct people group. And this here is the smoking gun, and at the bottom here it says Israel is no more. Now the original is in the Egyptian Museum. This is a copy. The reason this is so important is because this dates to 1200 BC. Now the Bible says at that point that the people of Israel are in their land, but here we have in Egyptian history the mention of the people of Israel, the great superpower of Egypt, has to mention Israel, and it also shows us that there is an unreliability about Egyptian history, because it says Israel, its seed is no more. In other words, I've wiped out Israel. They're all dead, they're all gone. Of course, we know that's not true. This is amazing. This is the smoking gun that we've been looking for. This is it. This is a smoking gun. We've seen it. 1200 BC. The people of Israel are definitely in the land. The Bible is correct, just as we've read it. Absolutely amazing. Look how huge this one is as well. Absolutely beautiful. And we're linking the Bible with Egyptian history, and they just went like that. It's perfect. It's brilliant. This is a day I'm going to remember forever as well. Pharaoh Merneptah claimed that he destroyed the people of Israel, but actually this Pharaoh left us with the evidence which decimated the weak and foolish theories of skeptical scholars who once claimed that no such people ever existed during this age.
And the first reference to Israel in Egyptian hieroglyphics, just incredible, 3,200 years ago. Yeah, it's pretty spectacular.